Hi everyone, my name is Cassie Lavoie, and I am your librarian here at Laurentian University at Georgian College. My job is to help you with your research by teaching you how to use our online resources, as well as inform you about our various special library services. So today we're going to start with starting the research process, how and where, accessing the History Research Guide and the library catalogs, using online databases effectively, RefWorks and Racer, citation mining, and lastly, I'll post my contact information so you can follow up with any questions. My number one tip when starting your research is to learn and absorb before you start searching. So we want to begin our searches with books and reference sources. And by reference sources, I mean encyclopedias. What's great about books and encyclopedias is that they have a lot of room to go into depth about your topic. So this way you can build your foundation and create a more informed opinion and argument on your topic. A fun fact about academia is that journal articles are written with the assumption that you already have an understanding of the topic. So that means the author will usually not go into a lot of detail on the background of your topic, and instead will focus on more specific facets of a topic. And that is not necessarily the most helpful place to start your research, although of course we rely heavily on electronic journals and scholarly articles. But that might be something you will consider later on in your research process. So when we're learning about our topic, we want to go through carefully and identify key concepts and key words of our topic. We want to think of synonyms for each of these concepts, and this is going to help us find a broader selection of resources. And I'll explain how this works when we get into search theory. So first of all, I wanted to point out the History Research Guide, as well as our catalogs. I'm going to talk about Racer a little bit later, so sit tight for that one. So firstly, we have our research guide, which is located here. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward little guide. It's still kind of under construction, but you can still get at all of these items. So here on our home page, you can see that our secondary resources like databases are listed here. The most important ones that you'll be using are America, History and Life, as well as historical abstracts. And if you navigate the pages, we can see we have a Get Started page, so a little guide for starting your research, as well as some reference sources for history. Some of this is a little bit Sudbury-centric, but it's good to know that they exist nonetheless. So we have a little bit on getting books, why we should use them, and the rest is still under construction, as I mentioned, but they should be done relatively soon. Next, I would like to point out our Laurentian catalog, which you still have access to even if you're here in Barrie. And this is basically what it looks like. Here I am on the advanced search page. And as we can see, we can really get right to the exact type of item that we would like. So a research interest of mine has always been Canadian labor history. Just add history there. And for our purposes, I would like something that's just in an electronic form so I can get at it right away. And we're going to click search. And here is our brief history of all Canadian labor that is located electronically. So this was an example of a very simple search. However, I just wanted you to familiarize yourself with how a catalog looks. And I'll just go in a little bit further by showing you one extra tip that I'm going to mention again later. So as we can see here, this is the entry for the item in library speak. We also have a list of subjects. And these are all the major topics listed in this book. And we can kind of maybe select some other subjects that we think might be interesting for us. So if you do see a subject term that you are interested in, you can always just click it and see what it looks like. And it'll bring you to a whole other list of items. In this case, just one, but that is another option for you to expand your searches. Again, this is quite specific, so I'm not surprised that only one result turned up. So next I'd like to show you the Georgian College catalog, which looks very similar to ours, so I won't spend a lot of time going through it. We can see here another advanced search page, and we can always select our keywords, author, title, subject, which I'll get into a little bit later. And it's pretty straightforward to search for it. One thing I will mention is that we never ask databases questions in the same way we might ask Google a question. So if I were to ask what were the causes of the Winnipeg General Strike in 1919, the database would have no idea what you're talking about. Instead, we would have to divide all of the search terms individually so that it knows to search for items that have all of those terms together. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about search theory. So I have some catalog searching tips. My number one tip is to keep it as simple as possible. 2 or 3 keywords to begin at the most. So an example here, I've used globalization and poverty, which has a very fascinating history. Again, we'll want to use the advanced search function so we can incorporate more than one term at a time. I also encourage you to play around with the different functions, so limit it by language or ebooks only if you're in the Laurentian catalog. And depending on your prof's expectations, you can also look for books published only after a certain year. And just to refresh again, if you do like a title, you can click on it and see what subject the library classifies it under. And this kind of expands your horizons into what you might be able to write about. So don't be afraid to push buttons and explore. So now we'll get into a little bit of search theory. And what I'm going to be showing you can be used for pretty much any database in the Laurentian collection. So we want to begin with a keyword search, starting with our most important concept. Keyword searches are okay for the beginning of your search because it will cross-search fields. So it will look for your word where it appears anywhere in a bibliographic record. So this includes author or title, publisher, abstract, anywhere in the item. So now I'm going to teach you Boolean searching, which is kind of like learning a new language. Boolean logic is based on the algebraic theory by George Boole, who was a mathematician. So Boolean logic uses operators, and these are special words that are and, or, and not, and they will connect the search terms for your topic. I'm not going to show you how to use not because it's a little bit complicated to use, and it often eliminates really good items that you could possibly be using. So we'll just focus on and, or today. So when we use Boolean search techniques, we can put together complex multi-concept searches. So we're going to be able to search for relationships between terms. So the first one we're going to go over is and. And retrieves articles that include all of your linked concepts. So obviously you've already done a little bit of your homework and done your research, and you found connections between concepts or people or events. And just a warning, the more concepts that you link using and, the fewer results you'll get. So what I'll show to you is a prime example here. So this I use using America, History, and Life. And this was the search that I did. In the first one, I just searched for the environmental movement. And this returned a total of 1,113 items, which is way too much for you to go through. However, if I were interested in the environmental movement and Aboriginal participation, I've added Aboriginal as my second term. And this drastically cut down my results to only 6. So as we can see, and can greatly reduce the number of articles that come up. Usually it's not that dramatic, but it's always helpful to sift through less articles. So moving on, Our next concept is OR, and when we use OR, we want to broaden or increase our search results. When we use OR, we tell the database to search for articles in which either term is located along with your other search terms. So this means that we can use OR to search for synonyms at the same time. So an example that I've used here is kind of silly, but it's Batman or The Dark Knight. And why it's important to learn how to use OR with synonyms is that a database might recognize Batman, but it also might recognize The Dark Knight. If we only use one, example, if we only search for Batman, we might miss out on articles that use The Dark Knight to refer to the same concept. And when you're formatting using OR in your search, you must place parentheses and with OR in capital letters between them. So the example that I've used here, alcohol or liquor, so we want to make sure that we're hitting both of these terms. And another example is university or college or post-secondary education. So as you can see, we would get the broadest number of results using the same concept.